Hello and welcome to Hare in the Hawthorn. Well, welcome back. We had technical issues on the last programme, which meant that, I lost this guest and had to bring him back a week later. And I'm so grateful to Glenn about coming back and doing part two. The two parts will be together, so you'll be watching this as a part two to the previous one. You may have seen me flustering at the end of the last video. I was kind of floundering around like a fish going, what's going on? So what had happened is the internet went down, and when I logged back on to record with Glenn again, then what happened was my computer decided to say that it was too busy and too full to record any further. So Glenn, thank you so much for agreeing to come back, and I do apologise massively for the interruption that we had mid-flow of the interview last week. So thank you for that and welcome. How are you doing?
It's okay, Kate. Thank you again for giving me this opportunity to continue the interview there. And these things will happen, won't they? When spirit don't want something to happen, or when they do, they'll organise it in the background. So as we said off here, I think part of that conversation was because it was leading down an avenue that they didn't want people to know about. So yes.
Yeah, and I
But
think
I'm good, thank you.
good. So we have reevaluated kind of where you're kind of going to go with talking about trance mediumship. We did feel that
Yeah.
the technical issues are often I definitely feel like they're often linked with getting to the crux of matters, and if spirits or astrals or other beings don't want that information to be shared, they'll quite readily shut down and make me look like a complete numpty. Thank you very much, spirits. So we've kind of reevaluated where we're going to go with that. So we left off on the previous part of the interview. We left off with you discussing about trance mediumship for you, how that kind of works for you, and we were talking beforehand about the platform you do that on. So if you could start off with just briefly an overview of trance mediumship and what that is for you.
Okay, well, trance mediumship is something I've been involved with for over 20 years. I used to sit in a physical trance mediumship development group, which, as most development groups, they fragment over time, don't they? Because people have their own journeys to go on. And it kind of sat in the background. I concentrated on the mediumship. And I would say, quite literally, it comes back, it comes in and out. As you know, I'm a musician, and it comes through when I'm playing drums. I look down and I see my hands and legs moving, and I'm like, oh, isn't that pretty? How am I doing that? I'm amazed that I can't remember doing that. So it's always been there in the background, and with the production there. And I think it was after, the lockdowns and everything, there was that opportunity, that quietness globally. And Spirit took that opportunity to come forward and start communicating through me. And one of those things was I was at home just chilling out with my girls. We were watching a film at the time, I believe. And the next minute, they looked at me gone out because I'd started to talk like a little boy. And I was just chilling out. And there was this little boy is a regular visitor to our home, and he was coming through talking to my girls. And so they filled me in what was saying. They was looking at me gone out because I don't speak like a little boy, not to my knowledge anyway. And so it kind of stemmed from there. And then with the encouragement from my guides, they encouraged me to sit once a week, to sit in the power, to get that blending with them, and then just to get that connection built up again. And upon doing that, they inspired me to start recording some of these sessions. Little did I know at the time it would be part of a radio show that I now do. And so they encouraged me to sit every week, which I still do now. And we have probably about half an hour, 20 minutes. And I just put those intentions out to the universe. Obviously, I've got the protection around me, the intentional prayer, and I just allow, basically, and I trust, and through each one of those sessions, some very inspirational contents come through, talking about how humanity is going to expand and grow, how we can embrace the true self, also what life is like when we make our transition, and that phase that we go through of learning and understanding. And they talk about how they blend their energies with ours. There's lots of different topics that they bring through every week. And what I do find particularly interesting on two levels, the first level is that I began to notice that they were taking over my voice box, and all manner of different spirit communicators were coming through. So we've got different accents. So we've got like a really posh Southern English accent that comes through. We've got a lady that comes through. Again, sounds quite upper class. We've even had a Liverpudlian accent that kind of emulates John Lennon's accent, if that makes sense. There's a little boy that comes in who I spoke of earlier. He's a regular visitor. And then there's a gentleman that comes through that sounds very much like Winston Churchill. And upon sitting in a session, just a private session with a couple of my spiritual friends, one of them made a comment saying, well, actually, he sounded like Winston Churchill. And she said, actually, he was really into spiritual mediumship. And she said, it wouldn't surprise me if it wasn't his energy that was coming through you. Now, I can't confirm that, obviously, but the coincidences were just stacking up. But yeah, there's numerous characters. And the second thing that fascinates me about doing this is when you're in trance, it's almost as if you're just in a little bubble of your own, you're chilled out, and you're just really comfortable. And you can kind of hear this in the background, but you don't know what's being said, and you don't know it's you that's saying it. And it's only upon either listening back to a recording, if you're recording it, or hearing back from the other people in there what was being said, and you're like, well, I can't remember saying any of that. I have no knowledge of that information either. So yeah, it amazes me the way that spirit will work with you and to blend their energies with you. And I believe on the last part one of the interview that we had, we was talking about getting that you have to get your energies right in order to keep your clear and protected as well. And so I think that when you do that, and also, you know, have that space, I think holding that space for spirit and giving them a specific time within your week where you dedicate that, right, this is our time, this is your opportunity now to come through, then they respect you for doing that. And that link gets stronger. And the communicators that come through will not only trust your energy, but will bring more content for those that are listening to it. So yeah, it's a lovely process. I really enjoy it.
So where can people find you when you're doing that? You said that you do this as part of a radio show that you do. Where can people find you?
Yes, well, every episode, as I say, there's a segment in the show where there is a channeling, this channeling that I'm speaking of, and it's on www.pulsetalkradio.com, and that's every Monday at 4 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. And so you can find me on there. There's a previous episodes, like reruns, if you want to listen back on them, on my website as well. So I'll tell you about the website a bit later on. But yeah, you can listen to them.
Do you always encounter positive energies when you're channeling? Have you ever encountered anything that's a bit nefarious, a bit kind of on the darker side of things, or have you got yourself so tuned that it's only the positive energies that come into you?
As yet, touch wood, because I do the channeling in my own house, in my own protective bubble, so to speak. I have had some very high vibrational energies that came through. But to answer your question there, when I was doing a house cleansing session a few months ago, this is the first time that this has happened to me. I wasn't channeling or anything like that. I was just, you know, finding out the different energies in the property. The next minute, I started growling. and these like vocalizations were coming through, inaudible, no words, but just this growling, and I don't, not to my knowledge, growl. And so I picked up on what it was in that property, and I told it to back off, and I got my guides and the archangels, and we sorted it out. But that's the only time I've encountered that, and it was, you kind of feel it. Well, my experience is I felt it before it happened, so I felt really, really dark and really sort of heavy. Oh, hang on a minute, what's happening here? The next minute I was growling. So I was kind of on it straight away, and I stopped it before I had the opportunity to take over, so to speak.
And that's one of the difficulties with when you are sensitive and you can channel, whether that's inadvertently or not, that unless you know how to keep yourself guarded and safe, and unless you know the signs when it's happening, when it's inappropriate or it's not a great energy, unless you have that knowledge base, it can be quite a dangerous thing, can't it? It can be quite detrimental.
Well, I can share a little story with you that happened absolute years ago when I was working in screen printing, if you don't mind me sharing that
Of
with you.
course, no.
And it kind of relates to channeling, but almost it kind of steps in the realms of a walk-in as well. Excuse me. And anyway, at work, there was a gentleman there was like always telling tales, always like brown nosing, the sort that I'm trying to describe. And he was telling me about, tittle tattle that was happening in the factory at the time. And I was kind of like half listening and half not. And there was lots of rolls of tape, like masking tape at the side of me. And anyway, I remember looking at this gentleman's face as he was telling me, and the next minute his face went like that. And he said, "What did you do that for?" And I said, "Do what?" He says, and he told me what apparently I'd just done. Apparently I just picked up a roll of tape and threw it at his face. And it hit it. He had quite a prominent nose, and it hit him on his nose, and it came quite keen. And I'm not a violent person, and to at the time I think I was unfolding as a medium and just understanding what was going off. And so I had a word when I got home, and to try and explain to somebody that, in fact, I'm trying to recall how I got around that. I just had to apologize and say I didn't know I did it. I didn't mention that I was going through this transformation, being a medium and stuff. And anyway, talking to my guide when I got home, I later found out that it was my granddad in spirit that couldn't stand the likes of this gentleman and knew what he was all about. And he'd had enough of hearing his telltale tales, and he just took over my hand, picked this tape up and threw it at him. So
Brilliant.
It's the first time that's ever happened to me, and hopefully the last, because it was trying to talk your way out of that it wasn't you. People aren't going to believe that.
I could just imagine you trying to go, sitting in front of your boss at work and going, "Wasn't me. It wasn't, it was my granddad. He's in spirit. It wasn't me." You'd kind of be carted off to the loony bin, wouldn't you? Let alone lose your job.
Yeah, it was something I didn't speak about at work, obviously, because in that environment, it was very sort of blokey, anything of that nature was a load of old nonsense. And so I kept it in, if you know what I mean.
I do. I need to ask you, you did give me some tidbits before we came on air about encounters that you've had. And I'm sorry to kind of rush through the mediumship bit, but there were some things that you said. I just want to go into that first, about asking you on because we know that your spiritual journey is from the day you're born, and you go through different phases of your spiritual journey. We all do, but there are certain people in life that have more of a draw, if you like, to the unseen, and kind of have waves of in their life when they know they have to do certain things. They have to open up, the mediumship in them or the psychic side of them. And a lot of time when this happens, when we're going through that phase, that we also have a kind of increase in anomalous or weird experiences that occur with us. While you're telling these stories, because I'm fascinated about these, could you have a think whether that was for in a kind of bubble of a particular time of your life when you're going through a kind of another stage, and just kind of recount it in that way. So the one I actually want to leave the fairy story, sounds bad, doesn't it, fairy side of things
I know what you
stories,
mean.
until a bit further on.
Fine, yeah.
I am super interested in aliens, and you did say that you had some alien encounters.
Yeah.
But for me, it was kind of it's the last Pandora's box, so of opening for me. So could you talk us through? And I am super excited about this. Could you talk us through your alien encounters?
We can, yeah. Well, basically, this started a good few years ago, about 4 or 5 years ago now, when I had both of these experiences. And one was actually when I was at home, and I would talk on a regular basis why I'm doing the pots, why I'm doing the dishes, to keep myself entertained, with a very close friend of mine at the time, who's sadly no longer with us in the physical realm, made his transition a few years ago now. But we used to dive deep with all manner of conversations, talking about, the spirit world, and, energy, and carbers and all of that. And so we was diving pretty deep whilst I was doing the pots. Anyway, something catches my eye in my kitchen. At the end of the kitchen, there's a conservatory that's like adjoined on. It's something I don't use, but it's just there. And so at the corner of my eye, I just saw this blue sort of light. And so I looked to it really quickly with both eyes. And as I did that, my jaw dropped. I couldn't believe it. And this sounds insane. I know it does. So I'm just pre-warning you. But I saw what I would describe as a 7 foot being, because it touched the top of the conservatory. Now, this being was like nothing I've ever seen before in my life, because I started off by looking down at the floor, and I could see what could only be described as chicken feet, but they were man-sized chicken feet, huge. They were blue, where you normally would see them yellow. These were blue. And I begin to put my eyes up and check out everything else what I was seeing. And it had blue feathers moving up, I would say, where the knees would be on a human. That's where the feathers started, all blue feathers. Looked like a man, except it was in like this bird form. And then I looked up towards the head, and I could see what I would describe as it had like an eagle's beak, but it was yellow.
Mm-hmm.
Its face was all blue. It was all blue, in fact, massive like eagle eyes. And it was just looking at me. And it must have been there for probably near on a minute. And then it disappeared. It was very quick.
Mm-hmm.
But I managed to, it's an image I'll never forget, because when you see a 7 foot bird man in your conservatory while you're doing the pots, yeah, it's quite bizarre. And I was still on the phone at the time when I witnessed this. So I'm just saying to my friend, you'll never believe this, but I've just seen, I described exactly what I've described to you. And he was very knowledgeable on this side of things. And he seemed to think, with the description I gave him, that I saw a blue avian, as he described it, because it was like it was bird and man sort of thing. I want to say that its chest was quite, you wouldn't mess with it, quite muscular features on the bird sort of thing. And I'm trying to remember whether I could see arms and hands. I can't remember seeing the arms and hands there. All I can remember is this torso, massive torso, these legs with the blue feathers, and then it going down to like these chicken feet, but they're blue.
Mm.
That's what stood out to me the most. I'm thinking, what, chicken feet? Were massive. It was like Big Bird. You remember Big Bird from Sesame? But it was like more sort of masculine, muscular, and the piercing eyes on this creature, as you would expect to see like on an eagle, they were so there, and they were fixed upon my direction. But to be honest, most would be intimidated by this, but I wasn't. I was more curious. And I was like, oh, right, sort of thing. I was quite calm. Whether that's because I was talking to my friend on the phone, and he was connected to to this sort of work that we do. I don't know whether if I'd saw it on my own, I might have needed a new change of underwear. I don't
Yeah.
know.
I mean, what kind of sense did you get about why it was there? Did you get any kind of feeling that it was there for
Well,
a purpose?
yeah, I feel as though because the conversations that me and my friend were having at the time, we were tapping into their frequency, and they were curious on us. And so, with that being the case, they decided to show themselves to prove who they were, to back up what we were talking about, and also really just to make sure that we're not sort of dabbling or messing it in realms that we know nothing of, and that we have that sort of respect for them as they showed that level of respect for us. But what we did encounter on several occasions when we were having not just this conversation, but previous conversations, we have a really good phone signal here, and we could hear like a now and again. And in that, there was like a dialogue, like a clicky sort of dialogue happening in that white noise. And not only myself, but the gentleman, my friend in question, could hear it as well. And we were both commenting on it, and we were both mediums. We were both tapping in. Well, what is it? And he brought through what he was told it was. He said it was reptilian, that what we was hearing, and they were listening in on our conversation because of potentiality of us connecting with these higher beings. So it was a very interesting occurrence. It's only happened the once in my house, but wow, it all started with the flash of the blue out of the corner of the eye. And if I'd have just ignored that and carried on doing the pots, then I probably wouldn't have got that encounter. But me being inquisitive, I quickly went and very quick, and I managed to capture it probably for less than a minute, but I managed to recall as much detail as I've described to you. And it wasn't an unpleasant feeling, but it felt grand, if you know what I mean. It felt very sort of regal, if that's the correct term. And I felt, I would say, humbled to be in the presence of being, albeit for less than a minute. And I do sense that, I've sensed these energies around, but I haven't seen them. I've felt them, but I haven't seen them to that magnitude as I did on the mission. So that's one of the encounters that I've experienced.
Isn't it amazing? And this is a common theme through throughout any kind of anomalous encounters that people have, whether it be from the alien realm or whether it be from the spirit world or whatever, that it is between about 30 seconds to a minute. And the impression that it makes on us and the amount of detail that we're able to recall because of that situation. I need to ask you about that. Have you come across anybody else who's had an encounter with a similar being, or have you found any research or any ancient knowledge around? I mean, my first thought was, and it could be completely wrong because I'm no expert by any stretch of the imagination, was my first thought was Egyptian gods.
Yeah, I see the connection there. Yeah. For me, I'm not really a researcher person because I trust my spirit guides implicitly, you know what I mean? And so I'd hate to disrespect them by going behind their back and doing my research. So I kind of took it at face value. But I'm sure if the research was done, there would be some sort of link, to a race of, creatures in that respect. But no, I've never done the research on it. I've just trusted the experience. I felt quite blessed to have gone through it. But my friend, he was very inquisitive, who I was talking on the phone, and he, I think he liked to research a bit of alien encounters, and so he came up with the term blue avian as well. So it did match. From what he was telling me, it did match that description in several levels there. So it was yeah, quite an encounter.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody's listening to this who've had a similar
Mm.
encounter, I'd love to hear in the comments if there's, because that to me is something, you know, you do hear kind of regular sort of species, if you like, of different aliens on visitation, but that kind of feathered, you know, animistic part human, part bird is something that I've never encountered. Like I say, I'm no expert, but it'd be interesting to see if anybody else has had a similar experience.
Well, you'd expect to see a grey or something like that, wouldn't you? That's the
Exactly.
most commonly cited alien species. But for me, it was so bizarre. Maybe it had to be so bizarre to stick in my mind, um, and for me to accept it. You know, it's
Yeah.
so surreal.
Wow.
But I did have another encounter on a separate occasion in a different location. If you'd like to share that one
Yeah,
as well.
please. Yeah.
This one is interesting. I'm not going to reveal the location, but let's just say it's on the Nottinghamshire-Derbyshire border. And I was with a paranormal team, and we was investigating an old building at the time. And we decided to come out of that building and just have 5 minutes just to regroup, you know, ground and just get yourself in the present moment. And so upon doing that, you know, the rest of the team, there were smokers, they were having a cigarette. I don't smoke, so I made myself out of the way of them, so I didn't breathe that in. And in the environment, there was a car park, a big car park, very highly sort of treed area. So there's 40-foot trees all around the car park, the perimeter. And in fact, the location is situated in almost in the middle of woodland sort of thing. And so anyway, I'm kind of like just trying to gather myself after doing a bit of paranormal work in the building. I'm looking around at the trees, trying to ground my energy. And there's a bit of street lighting there, say street lighting that's lighting up the car park, okay, and the trees are around it. Well, these trees, there's some gaps in between one tree and another, and the trees were quite long and slender. They were the bushy trees, they were about 40 foot tall. I couldn't give you the variety of tree that I was seeing there, but what I did notice, and I wasn't expecting it, is I saw I would describe, I think people have described it as a slender man. So this person or being was around sort of 40 foot in height, almost matching the height of the tree. Very skinny, long legs, a very skinny torso, long arms as well, and long, thin neck. And the head was almost as if it had been stretched, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so I saw this being almost like playing hide and seek, poking its head, looking at me. I couldn't see any features because it was almost like a silhouette that I was seeing because of the lighting levels in that area. And I just saw this head keep poking out. The next minute, I saw this being run from behind one of the trees to the next tree and then look over again in my direction. And I was like, I dropped a couple of F-bombs, I'll be honest with you, which alerted the rest of the team that was smoking there. And then I explained what I've seen. And then we spent probably the next 5 minutes trying to debunk it, trying to all see it again, because it happened so quick. So, yeah, I would describe that as like a slender man.
I've had a I've had a similar encounter,
Oh, wow.
and I'm not the only one. I have spoken to a few people in the paranormal community about the encounter that I had that is very, very similar, and I've had a few other people in this particular location say, yeah, we've seen the same thing. Again, like you, I won't give the location away.
Yeah.
Just because if people have this experience, it'd be nice to hear. I took what it was exactly the same. It was that big, but he, and I figure it was a he, was kind of crouched down, but sort of looking over at a wall that was way above my head, sort of 20 foot
Wow.
above my head. I was in a dip. And he was just sort of checking out what was going on, looking at all the people on the paranormal event and that kind of thing. And later on that night, I was in that same area having a cup of coffee, and a friend of mine who's a medium came up to me and she said, "Have you seen that thing?" And I was like, yeah, he's been there since the start of the night. Now, for me, with my fairy hat on, I just thought giant. You know, he had this very nature orientated kind of feeling about him, and he kind of flickered in and out. He wasn't a solid being. But he very much felt like he was part of the trees, you know, and that's where he liked to kind of hang out. So I don't know whether that's it. I didn't get the feeling that this thing, for me, Slender Man is not quite that big. You know, the whole Slender Man mythology gives way to sort of 7 foot high, as opposed to, you know.
I use that term, I think, because it was so thin.
Yes.
This being, and it stick like arms and legs and neck and head. So it's probably my inaccuracy.
Yeah. No.
But that's the way I would sort of place it in, you know.
And when he was playing kind of hide and seek with you, did you feel like it was a playful thing, or did you feel like it was you know, trying to scare you?
I don't think scary. I just think it was curious of what we were doing, and particularly because I was standing away from the rest of the team there. You know, it may have picked up on my vibration. You know, the light around my vibration there. I don't know. Maybe that attracted its attention there. Yeah, so it was interesting, very interesting. And to relate back to your encounter, you said that you thought it felt like a giant energy. I mean, did that appear very slender looking as well, or was it quite chunky like you'd expect?
No, he was very slender. I kind of picked up some features of the face that were almost like Scandinavian troll-like, so very long bulbous nose, very, very slim body and limbs, but had a pot belly. As he was crouched down, it kind of flickered in and out, and I could see this pot belly. But he was really curious about why the people were there at that time of night, what they were doing, and it was a curiosity. And he was just literally sat with his hands over this wall and his head. I could see his body because part of the wall had actually fallen away, so there was a view through. And he was just literally just curious. There was no malevolence in him. He was like, he was a bit freaked out, I think. You know, I got that feeling from him. It was like, you know, we're meant to be in bed by. Oh,
I can see it. That's
that
fantastic.
was a good one. I saw that coming in from over there. That was a good one.
Phenomenal.
I know. Yeah, that's because we're talking about the Fae world, and as we get into that, you'll kind of, I think you might notice somewhat. I caught one out the corner of my eye over in the other side of the room as you were talking earlier. So for those of you who just tuned in, don't know, I often get these light anomalies. As a paranormal investigator, I go, ooh, orbs, don't want to touch them with a barge pole. But the other part of me is I was just been saying before on air that I can actually see these physically with my own eyes on occasion. And it's great that they're back. I love it that they're back.
That was fantastic.
It was a good one. It was a good one.
But so, I like what you were saying, just to go back on what you experienced there. I like the fact that you saw this gentleman's features there in such a level of detail there. And it was probably, when he was talking about him, what came in my mind was, get off my land.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Very territorial.
Yeah.
But not nasty with it.
Yeah, definitely. I often think, do we disturb these things when they're you know, meant to be resting or whatever you, and it is people who've been on paranormal investigations who have come to me and said, yeah, I've seen something similar that they've not been able to explain in terms of ghosts or astrals, you know, that they've been like, you know, I was out on a paranormal investigation, I've seen, and it is usually in sort of tree lines and wooded areas that these things come forward. And I don't think it's disturbance as in noise. I think it's disturbance as in energy levels, you know, because our energies are all up. We're all kind of glowing out because we're banding together as people with a purpose of sort of communicating with spirits. And I think there is a disturbance, a little bit of a disturbance level that goes off. You've also had, and this is the bit that I'm super excited for, is the fairy encounter, and also you mentioned that there was more of a sprite encounter that you had. Which one do you want to start with?
Well, I'll start with the, shall we leave the best till last? I'll start with the a couple of Sprite things that I've seen. One of them is I was doing a bit of a Facebook Live with a colleague of mine in, I'm not going to name the location because I don't want
Yeah.
it to get bombarded, but let's just say it was in Nottinghamshire. It's known for its paranormal activity, and was in a wooded area within that location. And we were linking in, you know, because we're both mediums, we're getting some links, some information there. And upon doing that, I was aware, and we was both aware actually, that whilst we was in there, we were seeing like what I could only describe as like circular golden balls of light that pop in and pop out very quickly. There's no figure, there's no form. It's almost as if it's a Christmas light, but maybe the size of a Bulgarian.
Mm-hmm.
And they would appear in random spots near sort of like a fern wooded areas where there's near the forest floor, that sort of area, and maybe sort of chest height, I would see them. And we'd see them at the corner of our eye, or if we was looking at one another, as you're focusing on that person behind them, you could see ping and then it'd go,
Mm-hmm.
ping and then it would go. And so that was happening quite regularly in this location. And you know, I believe it's renowned for this in that environment. Again, I'm not going to give away the location because bless this place, it'll get inundated by people turning up, and so we've got to respect that. But that was one of the encounters. Another one. I don't think you'll mind me mentioning this location actually, because you've mentioned it before, I believe, on here, and this is why I'm bringing it up. I went to Woollerton Hall in
Mm-hmm.
Nottingham. I was there with my two girls. Again, I'm going back a few years when they were little, when they were younger, and we was exploring. This was in the daytime, relatively quiet. It wasn't that busy in terms of footfall, and so we walked behind the hall, and you've got like a grass sort of verge, haven't you? Like a grassland there. And anyway, I was looking from the bottom of that grassland towards the hall, and we was walking on that grass there. And as I did so, there's some steps, some back steps that go up the back of the place there. I saw this, what could only be described, I would say, as a like a orb or a sprite. I've heard it being called that, and it was purple. It was like a sort of, oh, what's the best way I could describe the color? It was just, you know, like neon light purple. It was
Mm-hmm.
neon light, and then it went to like a pastel shade. It was very prominent. It was dancing around these stairs like that. I would say as high as, I'm like 5'10", and it sort of came up to my chest. I would imagine if I was stood at the top of the stairs there, and it was just dancing rather slowly, almost like an insect would be curious.
Mm-hmm.
But I have never known an insect be that round,
Yeah.
that purple, and that sort of iridescent, if that's the correct term. And then
Mm-hmm.
I just watched it dance around, and then it just disappeared into like powder, into nothingness. And again, this encounter, it was very piercing. It was the height of summer, so it was
Mm-hmm.
in daylight, but it was very prominent in the daylight sort of you know, ambient. You could see it. It was so piercing. So yeah, I believe that it didn't feel like spirit,
Mm-hmm.
because spirit, you can usually, well, I can usually get a link and
Yeah.
find out who they are, and you know, can I help you, that sort of thing. Well, with this, it was just a feeling. It was like an energetic feeling, a feeling of calm, feeling of peace. And whether it's because I had my two daughters there and they were very playful, and as young girls are at that age, maybe inquisitive from that perspective, but it just felt, actually, this has just jogged my memory. Now I'm recalling it. It felt almost as if time was on go slow.
Yeah.
You know, like when you pause a video and you're slow tracking that video. It was like that thinking back, and I was watching this, and I could see that with all the detail in the speed that it was moving, but everything else appeared to be slowed down.
Mm. Yeah, it's amazing. So
Yeah.
If you don't mind me responding to those two bits. So
Yes.
literally, I'm smiling about the Wollaton. The space of Wollaton is particularly prominent with me at the minute for several reasons that will come out. But I literally read a paper that will be published on Neil's website fairly soon. And it is to do with Wollaton, but the lady who wrote it, she's a dowser, but she talks about elemental beings being surrounded by a plasma field, and they generate this amorphic bubble around them, which is coloured like a plasma field. And so that's why I was smiling all the way through that,
Wow.
because the coincidence of reading that paper yesterday and then you discussing it at the place where she has
Oh,
been
wow.
to investigate, the synchronicity of that is just crazy. So going back to your sprites, the lights flicking in and out. Yeah. Again, I've had a similar experience in Sherwood Forest, and I've recorded that before. I felt like these lights are almost like when you turn an old-fashioned telly on and off, and you kind of got that zoop of power that would take it down to a very small light. I often felt that that light was these beings trying to come through into a material realm. So they were forcing energy to manifest into. So they create their own portal through their own energy to come into here. Now they can stay within that state and kind of hover between the two worlds. So they would have been super intrigued by, you know, two mediums out and about. So they would have been blipping in and out and sort of what they say, what they're up to, and you know that your energy when you're working with those kind of people, and that's your kind of energy level too. That you, like I say, you do glow out, don't you? You glow out to these things.
Definitely. Yeah.
Fascinating stuff. Yeah, the Wollaton thing has just blown my mind about. Yeah, there's synchronicities and that all over the place. It's crazy. It's brilliant.
Well, I would say, I mean, the size of it was probably about that size.
Yeah.
But it was so piercing. It cuts. I mean, the sun was quite. It was a summer's day, and this was brighter than the sun, but purple.
Yeah.
It's so bizarre.
It is. It's crazy, isn't it? It's crazy. And the thing is, we could try and sort of figure out and get to the bottom of what these things are, but you know, we're literally just throwing theories out there, aren't we? And as you've said before, having these encounters on face value can be probably more beautiful, I think, than trying to sort of dig deep into the deeper meanings of them. You know, just taking them as that really special encounter is definitely a lovely thing to do.
I often find as well, you know, if I know too much, then that would block the purity of that energy from me interacting with it, and maybe like I don't know, color what's about to manifest, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So yeah, probably going in naive has probably served me well.
Yeah, definitely. And what's just sprung to mind in that context, if we put it into a real context, you know, there has been children all over the world that have been abandoned or lost in woodlands, in incredibly wild places, that have been brought up by incredibly dangerous animals. You know, we have documented accounts of children who've been raised by wolves or huge troops of monkeys that you know aren't particularly nice towards humans. And I think it is their innocence and not having a preconceived idea of these things can be dangerous, or so that there is a purity in that relationship. And I think you're right in what you're saying. You know, you can kind of overload yourself with too much on an intellectual level that puts up a barrier, doesn't it? So you did promise me you'd save the best till last.
Okay. Brace yourself.
I'm excited.
Okay. Well, this happened in my home, and I'm going back probably. I'm trying to figure out the timeline. Probably about 4 or 5 years ago now. My children were at their mums because we've got shared parenting there. And so I was just having a chill out night. I was watching, I like a lot of comedy, things like that. So I was just watching that on the telly. I was chilling out, low level lighting, you know, to get that ambience there to unwind. And upon watching the program I was watching, out the corner of my eye, I saw movement, and I'm a bit like a raptor or a cat. If I see movement, I'm on it, sort of thing. And so I noticed this movement, and I thought, oh, what's that? So I looked over to it, and I saw, no word of a lie. I'll just describe the layout of the room so you can get some scale of it. Well, where the TV is, there is a DVD cabinet at the side of it, and that then goes into an adjoining room because it's like you know, a through room, if that makes sense. And so I saw this light coming from the through room to where that cabinet, the DVD cabinet, was, and I looked at it with both eyes again, and it was, I would say, it was a being. I would place it around sort of 9-10 inches in height. This being wore, now this is going to sound insane, but it had, do you remember the Robin Hood pointy green hats? It had one of those, looked like it had been handmade, sort of thing. And the clothes were the same coloured green. And the clothes looked a little bit sort of tethered around the edges as well. And I was aware of small booties on, and now I can't remember whether they were green or brown at this stage, but predominantly the main colours on this being were green. But I saw short cropped hair as well, felt very masculine, a young sort of boy masculine energy. And what did strike me about this, I would say it wasn't fully solid, it was almost solid. So I could see a little bit through it. And what did strike me about this is it had wings. Now, these wings that I saw on this being were probably, say, in comparison to its physical body being about that tall, these wings were massive. They were like that sort of size, that height, and the being was about that height. So these wings were far outweighed the size of the body. Now, these wings were translucent, and almost when you look into like a dragonfly's wings, you can see that sort of blue hue shimmering in that translucency there. So I saw that on the wing, and the next minute I'm watching this being walk into my living room where the DVD cabinet is, and it's just going about its business, walking through like that, and halfway where it meets the cabinet, it just went into like what I would describe as chalk dust, and sort of went back into the atmosphere, and everything became clear again. So it kind of it sort of manifested into almost a solid state. I wouldn't say tangible solid state because I could see through it, but it was like imagine the 3D projections that you see. It was almost like that sort of feeling, but it had intelligence. It was walking in that environment. It wasn't looking at me directly, so it was going about its business. And I would say that this encounter, I was amazed because I was tracking it. I was like, you know, when you see a cat move, it goes, tracking it like that. And I was amazed that it was still there. And then like I say, it just dispersed into this chalk dust. So that was one of the encounters in that night. A bit later on that the same evening, again, I'm just sat here watching the telly, chilled out, still amazed. I've got that level of curiosity and gratitude for that experience. In fact, the first thing I said when I saw it was, wow, thank you very much. Thank you very much. That's beautiful, you know, because I believe that if you show gratitude, you know, that expands the awareness there as well. And so later on that evening, I couldn't tell you the timeline between seeing that first small masculine being to seeing this being. But what I did see, the same area, again, I was notified by that movement. And so I turned my head. This time, it looked like a female version of what I've just seen, because I could see like long brown hair with like a curl in it. Almost looked like this. She was very white, very pale, like she was wearing some sort of nightdress. Again, looked a bit tethered around the edging and around the bottom there. I think they call them like, is it Cinderella dresses or something like that? Looked like she was wearing something like that. Again, very white, very bright, and I could see it moving as she moved. and she made 2 steps like that. Again, same description, the same size wings in comparison to her body. She made 2 steps and then she jumped in the air, and then I saw these wings open up and take flight. And she went up, I would say probably the DVD casing is about 3 feet off the floor. She went towards that height of 3 feet off the floor in a diagonal angle, almost like a plane would when it's about to take off. It goes like that, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, she made a little 1, 2, 3, jumped up, and the wings opened up. She flew up about sort of 3 feet in the air, and then again I was tracking her in amazement. I was quiet, the same as before. It almost looked like a projection, not fully solid. The wings were more translucent than the rest of her body. She wasn't, I don't feel she was looking at me, again, going about her own business. But whether she was aware of me looking at her, because when she reached the top of the DVD shelf, again, it disappeared into like chalk dust again into the atmosphere, and the atmosphere became clear again.
Wow.
So whether them realizing that I was looking at them made them change their frequency and disappear, I don't know. I couldn't tell you about that. But they both happened on the same evening. It was very peaceful. And you mentioned earlier where was I at in terms of my life when I was going through these encounters? Well, in relation to that last encounter with what I would describe as faeries, I would say that I was at peace with myself. I had gone through a lot of trauma, like personal life and all of that. And I just come to the realization, yeah, I'm happy with myself. And I was chilling out, having a laugh. So whether that had anything to do with it, that I was open to having this encounter, there was no resistance, no resilience there, and I kind of let go. Mm-hmm. In many respects, I don't know, but it's interesting that that's what I was going through at that time.
Definitely. Yeah. When you speak to people about these encounters, it sounds like you've got a really supportive network of friends around you who kind of understand that the world is a very strange place. How when you retelling these tales, how is it usually met? What kind of reactions do you get from people?
Well, my family, bless them, I'm completely different to the rest of the family. They respect me for who I am, let's put it that way. But I couldn't have this in-depth conversation with them because they'd be ringing a special number to come and collect. Let's put it that way. But I don't share this with everyone. Having said that, I just have on your show. But yeah, with the people that I have shared it with, they understand. You know, they don't judge. They're as intrigued as you are as well with the encounter. There's probably a few like holes in the story that they want to kind of like unpick and try and say, well, are you sure that that happened? You know, and all of that. And what can you say? I witnessed it. You know, I was there. I saw it, and that's all I remember, really. So in that respect, yeah, I've got a nice supportive amount of friends and colleagues, I would say, that are on the same level. But then again, in balance, I have a lot of friends that would still think I'm absolutely barking mad for talking about this and talking about spirit and what I do. So I respect their own viewpoints. You know, they can come to their own conclusions. I'm not one to judge anybody for having their own beliefs. And so yeah, I would certainly say do with it what you will. You know,
exactly.
it's your choice. But those were the genuine encounters that I did experience there.
You've just given me a great idea to start up a fairy helpline of people can phone when they've had encounters and they can't talk to anybody else. Like, you know, you might see a ticker tape coming across the bottom with an 0800 number where you can talk to somebody about your experiences. I'm
I
so
think you're
pleased.
onto something with
I
that,
know, I know.
definitely.
I think there is a lot of people out there who have even skeptics. I've never sat down with a skeptic and been able to get them to 100% say that they've never experienced anything strange. So, and I do truly believe that people do have strange experiences all the time. And I think it's nice when you get to a place as a human being that you can appreciate them and appreciate the beauty in them, and have that gratitude and say, not everybody has this, not everybody has had an experience where they can see fairies or have visitations, you know, from aliens that are positive encounters as well, you know, not negatively affect them in their lives. Really mindful of time. I am going to get you back on, but I do want to just put out there before we do the whole thing about where people can find you, that we've just been chatting about doing an investigation together, haven't we? So that's a
We have, yeah, indeed.
top secret squirrel, and I'm sure information will go over to your website or to your Facebook page.
Yeah, I'll be putting it up there when we've recorded, produced it, and then it will go out, definitely. But yeah, it's an interesting location. I don't want to say too much to you because it'd be nice for you to go in there blind, so to speak.
Mm.
But all I will say about it is every time I've been there, it's very active. There's always something going on all manner of timelines as well. So, you know, there's a lot of emotions there. That's all I'll say. It's very busy. A lot
Yeah,
of trouble.
that's brilliant. That I know, I'm so excited to go out and to work with you for at least an evening, and go and see what we can pick up and find out in that location. And that will be available. Video footage will be available from Glenn's site. So could you briefly tell people where they can find you? What different platforms, how they can tune into your radio broadcasts and your interviews that you do, and generally, where can people find you?
Okay, so my main hub is my website, which is www.glennboddicespiritualmedium.com. And on there, if you have a good look round, there's online courses that you can download. There's videos. There is lots of free content as well. There's the radio show, the previous episodes on there that you can listen back or download if you wish. There's also the podcast that I'm involved in called Full Circle Back to Oneness on the website as well. And so you can listen back to all of those episodes or download them if you wish. And there's also there's a link to our YouTube account there with the Full Circle podcast, which in fact is where the investigation will feature as well once we've produced that as well. So I would say my website is my main hub, but I do take a lot of interactions and bookings and live content on my Facebook page, which is Glenn Boddice Spiritual Medium. And so you can find me on there, you know, have a nosy round again. You can comment. It's always nice to have interaction with people. And what I do every Monday is I have a conversation with people, varying in topics, what my guides bring forward. And I encourage anybody to take part, and because it's all about a community feel and it's about helping one another through unusual times that we're all going through. So that's what I do on there every Monday. Also, I do some free live mini readings, which occur twice monthly on a Wednesday, and they start at 5 p.m. through till 6 p.m. And that's on a sister page connected to all of those I've described. I'm not going to give the name of that page simply because it's a private group page due to the fact of spamming and all of that. So anybody that wants to join that, then head over to both of those platforms and, you know, look for it there, or indeed send me a message and I'll send you that invitation, and you'll be safe in the knowledge that it is a private group, and so you know you can get involved without feeling a little bit conscious there about anybody else looking in. But also, you mentioned the radio show there, and the show that I present is called From Beyond with Glenn Boddice. That occurs every Monday at 4 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, and that's on www.pulsetalkradio.com. And so you can find me there. And in the show, we normally have a conversation, a topic that we talk about. It is a talk show predominantly. And then in the show, we have a channeling from spirit, where it allows me to become a vessel, an instrument for spirit to bring their wisdom through. So you'll be able to encounter that. And also in the show there, you have a weekly energy forecast reading that will help you navigate your way through your week ahead. So,
Brilliant. You are super busy. You know, where do you get time for anything?
I don't know. I often ask myself that question.
I think
Just
you
little
must be
bits at a time, I think.
you must be one of these time lords that can kind of elongate the time, elongate the day, so you can fit everything in. And well, I am super pleased that you've actually found time to sit down with me and have this chat. It's been so interesting, and I do think that after we've done that investigation, maybe later on in the year we could get back together again. And do another interview, maybe going over that investigation and other stuff, you know, that we've not been able to talk about during this interview. So Glenn, thank you so much. We're going to sign off. Thank you for your time. Thank you for sitting with me, and we will see you very soon.
Thank you, Kate. It's been a pleasure.